Okay, so now I'm going to analyze my process and understanding for the lecture one and anatomical process. Okay, let's quickly go through this and skim through it, and let's see what actually I did well and what I can actually improve on for next time. Okay, so first, as you can see, it took a while to understand and open up the Viva. So during the actual assessment, you're not going to have time. They're going to give you the model and you're going to have to explain it straight away. So right there is a downfall that I can probably improve on for the next one instead. But that's probably because I'm trying to set up that simulation and it's my first simulation too. So that's something that I'm trying to bring there. So it's okay. We're going to basically um, elaborate on ourselves since yep, so this is just the introduction to the Viva simulation process, which I can just skip through because it's not important and I just introduced it in the other video as well. I have a active on week that acts as a lab competency. This is that process, this is that process. The anatomical terms, the superior and bottom. Yep. So what I analyzed here was the superior and the bottom, which is correct. And you're gonna later see another term that you need to know that can be used interchangeably between superior and inferior is actually cranial, which means the head. But there's another term which I actually got wrong in the mock Viva last week, and it lost me 1 mark. So that's what I'm trying to simulate here. So this is actually called the rostral end as well. Yep, so that is correct for the analysis of the head and the cranial. So the cranial and the rostral are used interchangeably. At the tail, we have the caudal. Yep, so that's correct too because caudal means tail. So that analysis is spot on. Which is referred to the caudal. And I got confused that with the vesicle simply because during that time pressure, the only thing I could think of. Yep, so I acknowledge my mistake of the vesicle and how can I actually improve for next time. So next time I can think about caudal just means the bottom of the body, and vesicle refers to the vertebral column, which is actually the lower end of the vertebral column. So that's something that I'm going to learn and experience for next time. So understand the positions and how it actually corresponds to different parts of the body because they're actually not the same thing. That related to the vertebral column was the vesicle. So I assumed that was the bottom. But the vesicle is actually the end of the coccyx, and that doesn't correspond to the bottom of the body. So that explain is the coronal plane. So the coronal plane splits into the front and back. Yep. So coronal plane splits into the front and the back, also known as the anterior and the posterior. Something that I could have further improved on was pointing at the diagram here. So I don't do it often because it's hard to see the mouse. But during the Viva, I probably need to do that. So just explain that it's split into a different plane, it's splitting between the top and the bottom. So that analysis is good as well. As the anterior and the posterior. So let's further define our terms. So anterior is the front end of the body. Yep. So anterior is the front end. Good. Posterior is the back. Yep. And posterior is you can see this is the medial. Note that the medial. Yep. Good analysis in the medial and median because those differ, and I explained correctly how they differ. So median, think of it as a middle, and the middle is actually split further away, which is something I got wrong in that analysis there. So that's something that can be improved on. So know your difference between medial and median. Actually very different to the for inferior and superior. The nose is inferior to the eye. Yep, so using position, which to explain it is good because you're basically consolidating the understanding with the anatomical position. And that's something that I'm trying to do here. The reason is another example could be another example is the front and the back. So you could say the bottom is posterior to the front. The reason why is because it's located at the back. Yep. So you explained it correctly in the way that you explained the posterior and the position. So always explain it relative to another position. Now another term and is further to the side. Another example that we can include is yep, so again for this one, just point to where you're directing, whether it's to the side or up further, because that explains your analysis and properly directs the DA into understanding the references. To the back. So for the planes, we have the interior. Yep, so this is just summing up what is covered in the anatomical planes and references. Not really necessary when you're doing the Viva, but just to consolidate everything that I've learned in my understanding. I think it's really good for comprehending this in the Viva, because this is the first time I've actually attempted to stimulate the Viva like this. Yeah, we have the transventral, which is the belly. We have the dorsal, and we have. Yep, so analysis of the ventral and the dorsal is correct as well. So I think the analysis was very good. Medial, lateral, and they can also be used as compound words. Yep, so understanding the compound terms was essential and something that was very good to point out. Oh, so for example, if closer to the top of the body, but further away to the side of the body. And overall, the analysis was very good in the terms that I used anatomical position, the way that I was expressing and comparing to different terms and being careful about the terminology, because in anatomy, terminology is actually very important. Some things I could have worked on was just really understanding the different positions and how to elaborate. Because as you can see, like through times of that, I was like very uncertain about terms. But I think it's just backing yourself with your knowledge and just really consolidating on your understanding that helps with this Viva. So for next week, I'm gonna focus on just really taking the time to analyze. Obviously, during the actual Viva, I'm not gonna have that much time to go in depth. So it's more essential to be concise. And that's something that I'm often experiencing when I'm explaining the concepts to myself, and something that I'm gonna do next week. Or for the next Viva, which is lecture 2 on gastrulation, which will actually be covered soon.